Just kidding.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the collective. Sorry we're late. I had to get my tea. I just want to show everybody, like, I had to get my tea on. So we have our guest Julie. She's in the background, having difficulty, some technical issues trying to get connected and all that stuff. I'm not sure how that's all going to work out, but she's going to keep working on it, or we'll end up just talking, you and me, Shaun. So
yeah, buddy.
Hey man, how you
Not
been?
like we've never done that before.
Right.
Do you have a topic that you want to jump into in case Julie doesn't
I got
join
lots
us?
of topics. So
Okay.
let's well, I got a really good question from Winterstorm 427. I was gonna upload it, but I didn't get a chance to before we went live because I was getting tea.
Dude, your chamomile mint tea was so important. Don't worry about the entire internet in the plank position waiting for you to like
just
dip
waiting
your
for
tea bag.
Let's do this.
Oh, Chance Burrows, you're fired.
Okay, so what do we got here? Let me pull it up because I'll just read it to you guys. So
yeah, sure.
Random question from the podcast a couple nights ago. People are gathered at the end of your life to honor and pay respect to you. When they list all your accomplishments and best qualities, someone shouts out, "Yeah, but..." What would they say after that?
Yeah, but he was a jackass.
Morton
Satch.
But that raised an interesting question: is like, what is it? What is it you hope to leave? What is it you want to leave behind? Because A, we're not getting out of this live.
Mm-hmm.
That's a given. So what do you want? What do you want to be able to leave behind? What is it? Something? Is there something you want to leave behind, or you just want to, like, smash in last minute, all bedraggled and tore up, and be like, "Whew, that was quite the ride"? Or do you want to have like a legacy? What is your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got higher aspirations than just being called a jackass, and then that's the end.
Hopefully.
Of it. Because I mean, that's the way of life, man. I mean, some people are gonna, at your funeral, they're gonna yell out, "That dude rocked."
Yeah.
And then someone's gonna yell out, "That dude was a jackass."
Mm-hmm.
That's life, man. And so I just hope more people are calling me a dude that rocked rather than he was a jackass. Hopefully there's only 3 people at the back who are yelling jackass.
Hopefully.
And then hopefully my friends mob them. But you're never going to make everyone happy, and it's not my job to make anyone happy. I'm literally not trying to make anyone happy. I'm just doing my best. And so to the question, I suppose, and what am I trying to do? I'm trying to not leave a legacy that people will look at me and think, that dude was awesome. I'm just trying to leave a legacy of information, a legacy of thoughtfulness, a legacy of planting seeds in other people's minds, and not living forever through that passage of wisdom or passage of knowledge or planting those seeds. I don't want to live forever. I just want the species to get better.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm going to leave anything behind, if anyone's going to do anything at my funeral, hopefully they'll all nod at each other and say, "Yeah, I learned a thing or two from that dude, but he was a jackass." As long as they learn something, I'm good.
That's a great way to put it. Honestly, I think the greatest legacy we can leave is a swath of people that we have affected in a positive manner. And that way, you can, I don't know, at least I can feel good about the fact that I left the world better than I received it.
Oh, that's a good point, though. So, I mean, do we need to feel good about it? Because I don't feel like it doesn't drive me. The feel goodness of it doesn't drive me.
No.
It's my desire to serve. It's at the core of me, I guess. I don't care if anyone like ever pats me on the head, but I do care to serve. So, if anyone likes it or not, I guess that's not that important to me. What is important is that it's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess really at the end of the day, it won't matter, right? How we feel about it won't matter. I was talking with some guys at the instructor course
Oh
that I
yeah,
was just
right.
finishing
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah.
And they were asking me about some time while I was in the military, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing some stuff and played with bombs and all kinds of great stuff. But they were like, well, isn't that stressful? Isn't that something that you have a hard time with, like, working out? I'm like, no, because there's a saying in the engineers, at least in the EOD and that kind of stuff, is you're either right or it doesn't matter anymore. And it's a similar concept, because at the end of the day, you're not involved in the process. Like, when you are gone, your interaction stops. Or does it?
Well, I would like to reframe your engineering EOD universal sentence from you either get it right or it doesn't matter. I would
Maybe, yeah.
reframe it. I would reframe it to this: you do your best or it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You can be freaking wrong and know that you're wrong.
that's
And
true.
you'll still charge ahead being wrong because you're a goof.
Yeah,
So it's just doing your best. That's
yeah,
a way more different intention than right or wrong, left or right, up or down.
that's a good point. Because who knows? Who knows what's right or
I
wrong?
mean, do any of us? I think we have a general sense of what's right or wrong, just so
Some
Zach
of us do.
yeah, excuse me. So Zach had put out a clip from the other day. He cherry picked out a little piece from me being on his podcast recently, the Canadian
Hmm.
podcast. And it's a fun clip. And, he's put some B roll in there with a guy, and he's got a big old beard, and he's kind of looking like all pretentious and, that condescending manner about, you can't tell me to do push ups.
That
I
was
am
great.
a push up.
That was great.
And so, looking at that, there'll be people who watch that clip and they'll think that I'm a jackass. They'll think, what right do you have to tell me to do something that's going to improve me? I
How
don't.
dare you?
How dare I try to improve you? I'm not trying to improve you, bro. You gotta want to improve yourself. I'm
Yep.
just putting it out there that we all know that in our heart of hearts, we all know inside ourselves when we're being lazy. That was the point of that clip. If you're
Yeah,
being lazy, you know it.
absolutely.
And the same also goes for if you're really deeply wrong, like really wrong, you
Hmm.
know it. And if you
Absolutely.
decide to go out and do that thing while you deeply know you're wrong, you know it sucks. It feels crappy. There's a big difference between knowing deeply that something is deeply wrong, and then the other aspect is making mistakes. Making mistakes are way different than committing to something that you know is deeply wrong.
I couldn't agree more. I think you have to, first off, you have to know. I just listened to or at least listening to the Jocko podcast, 369, the game within the game.
Oh, you got the game going, hey?
Yeah, and there very early on, he says, if you were just standing in a grass field and you just saw people running around,
Oh,
you had
yeah,
no
right.
idea what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the point. Is like, if
That's
you
the
don't
point.
know, you don't know, and until you actually stop and go, oh, what are all these people doing? That's the beginning.
Well, the beginning is the observation of the game.
Yeah,
And you
Eh,
can't play the game until you start thinking about what the heck is going on in front of you.
yeah. And speaking of which, someone right in front of us. Hey, Julie, how's it going?
Oh, if we can hit, oh, we've got volume.
We're good to go, I think. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, we
Yeah,
can
we're
hear
pretty
you.
good to go.
Awesome. So,
Sorry about technical difficulties.
oh, no worries. Just want to say hi. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, everything good. We had to just kickstart it off and get going. We were talking actually about. I'm going to ask you the same question that we got was.
Did you hear any of the stuff that we're talking about
No,
as
I
a
didn't.
preamble?
Okay,
Okay. So
perfect.
this is where Chance Burl says, well, now it's my turn to throw you under the bus.
Yep, I'm gonna throw you right on the fire. Actually, not on the bus. I don't throw people in front of buses. I just throw them on the fire. I'm a barbecue kind of guy. What can I say? So here's the question. People are gathered at the end of your life to honor and pay respect to you. And when they list all of your accomplishments and best qualities, someone shouts out, "Yeah, but," what would they say after that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Huh.
What do you
I
think?
might
Yeah, well,
have to
that's what
think
we
about
do
that.
over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to think about that one. a
No,
little
that's
bit
not how
more.
it works. You already
Yeah.
know the answer.
You're
Just
on the
spit it
fire.
out.
Just shoot her. Yep. What do you got? You're on
Can
the
you
hot seat.
can you
You're on.
repeat it? Can you
Sure.
repeat it?
Absolutely, I can. So, people are gathered at the end of your life to honor and pay respect to you. When they list all of your accomplishments and best qualities, someone shouts out, "Yeah, but," what would they say after that?
Yeah, but she was only 4'11".
That's a great one. I like that. I don't know if they would say that about me. They might just be like, "Oh man, that guy was huge." But we got another question. As we'll dive into this one because it's a bit more specific. And I want both your guys'. I'm going to throw Shaun on the fire first, just so you know.
Sure.
If the only currency we have in this life is time, which we both spend and is spent for us, and we exchange it for experience, valuable / forgettable, depending on what you do, would you prefer more time or better experiences?
Well, I've always said to my sons, Julie's probably heard me say this. Actually, she's been to our house and met my family a number of times. She might have even heard me say this out loud. I prefer quality over quantity.
Mm,
I prefer a higher quality of life rather than a longer life. And by higher quality, I mean more meaningful, more rich, more complex, more nuanced. I mean, I am not interested in dabbling. And so that's what I consider quantity to be.
mm,
If someone says, "Hey, you only get a day to live a maximally full life versus 100 years of monotony and mediocrity," I'll take the day, man. If it's going to give me a full experience. So what I try to do is fully experience each day for as long as I
mm.
can. So I'm chasing quality, not quantity.
Julie, how about you?
I would agree with Sean's point. I would definitely take the quality over quantity, making the most of each day, doing your best, getting the most out of it is definitely what I would go with rather than have more time and being mediocre day to day. Just do your best every day and make the most of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't see more time of just every day being the same, because I've had those days, where they were the same as yesterday, and that one was the same as the day before, and that one was the same as the day before, and they're soul killing, I
I
find.
don't want it. I
Right?
wouldn't want it.
Right?
I
It doesn't.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but this actually kind of goes into what I want to talk about today in general. And Sean and I were talking about this a little while ago. Was the idea of people who say, I peaked in high school, or and they're like 40 or 50, or they spend 20 years in the military, or they do 10 years of business and achieve a high level, and then nothing past that. What's the difference between peaking and living your life? Julie, I'm gonna throw you on the fire.
Well, I mean, to your point about someone peaking in high school, I mean, I don't think that's a bit of a cop out. You've got every day. You're just going to get better with each day if you do the work. So there's always ways to peak. You might have a new challenge every day, and if you're just doing the same thing and you're not challenging yourself, perhaps you're peaking at what you think is happening at that time. But there's always something that you can get better at or achieve. So I don't think that that's kind of a bit of a cop out, in my opinion, in terms of peaking at that stage. You can always peak at a different opportunity, something different to learn. There's always something.
Yeah. Do you think that we need to? Do you think that seeking out those peaks is like important, or do you think we should just look to live through, like, just to live life in more of a balanced manner? Like, do you think we should chase those peaks, or what do you think?
Well, I think It depends on the situation. Certainly, there are different peaks or things, outcomes that you want to achieve throughout your life, but you also have to be in the moment and be present with what's happening as well. So I think it's a balance between chasing whatever peak it is and being present and living your life day to day and appreciating the small valleys per se, as opposed to the peaks.
Shaun, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Julie. I wonder if we hung out for about 10 years and
Maybe, just a little bit of time together.
Do we know each other? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if we're aligned. So, I agree with Julie, but I will say this, and I've said this recently, and it's in respect to veterans. And so, I'll use the classic example of if you were the high school football captain or the quarterback or whatever, I don't know, a thing, and you're now 33 years old and you're still wearing that football jacket that says quarterback from 1973 or whatever. Like if that's your big proud moment in life, if you've done nothing between high school and the age of 33 to replace that jacket, well, that's something that you need to shake your head about and hang that jacket up and save it for another day, called the past, and then get on with the present and the future, which is not, you shouldn't be hanging your sense of pride on something from grade 10 as a 33-year-old man or woman. And this is what I see with veterans from time to time, more often than I would like to, is someone who's living in the past all the time, because that's the last time that they did something that they felt proud about or felt had value or they felt was valuable to society. And so if that was 10 years ago that they felt good about themselves, and they're always living in that moment of constantly trying to be that dude who is in basic training for the rest of their life, because that's when they felt like they accomplished the most in their life, man, that's a hard way to live. And it's not a good way to live, because I look back at my life, and as I've said before in the past, my first career, all the way up through to JTF2, was a good career. It was notable. I'm proud of it. I accomplished a number of things, and people give me the nod for it. But man, I did a bunch of other careers that I got a bunch of other nods from that I feel was valuable and I'm somewhat proud of. And so, to me, if you've got to look back years to be proud, then you don't understand how to live a life that is pursuing peaking in life. Peaking doesn't have to be peaking every day, just like Julie said, but you've got to aim for a peak on the horizon called maybe Mount Everest and start heading towards that peak in your life. So you don't have to consider the last mountain that you climbed 10 years ago. Now you can be in the real time considering which peak you've identified that you're now pursuing. Be proud about the pursuit of something rather than be proud about something you did 10 years ago.
That begs the question then, how do we get over the pride of accomplishment in terms of doing something hard, being in some sort of position, right? And then we're proud of it, and we're like, yeah, man, this is what I did. I got to do cool stuff.
So
how do we get
I'd just like to reframe that.
Okay.
Because you said, how do we get over? And that's not what I'm suggesting.
Beyond, perhaps?
No, not even beyond. What I'm suggesting is this. You don't have to, your past, my first career, we'll use as the example, the military. I don't have to get over it, and I don't have to shelve it. I don't have to do anything with it other than acknowledge it, understand that it's part of me that makes me awesome, and then rely on that to go do other awesome things in the real time in the future. So I don't have to kind of categorize it in any other way than this. It's part of me. It made me who I am. I'm proud of it. It allows me to X, Y, and Z, period. And so I don't have to shoot up fireworks every single day about, remember that time when I was in JTF2? That's not how I think. But I do know that that's what I was at one point, and I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to diminish it, but I'm not going to keep pumping it up every day because I've got nothing else on the go. I've got lots of things on the go that rely on my first career. to help me do what I'm doing right now. So I'm not sidelining it. I'm not highlining it. I'm just letting it be and getting on with trying to peak against that mountain on the horizon.
Well, the next one, yeah. Julie,
Yeah,
got
I
any?
mean, yeah, I would say I agree with that. It makes whatever your accomplishments were in the past, that's part of you. It makes who you are. But then you have to move on, and what's next and what will be your next accomplishment. But to Sean's point, it's not about what you did 10 years ago. That's part of you. But let's move on and acknowledge your accomplishments. But what are you going to do next?
Mhm.
Not living in the past, living in the present and with an eye towards the future, but it's day to day.
Mhm. Yeah, it
Yeah.
reminds me of you guys must have watched MASH, right? Back in the
Yeah,
day,
sure.
the TV show.
What was her name?
Well, there was an episode, and
Houlihan, was it? Was it?
good old Houlihan, yeah.
Yeah.
There was an episode in there, and it was they had a visiting doctor, and he was sitting in the tent with Hawkeye and Trapper, and he was the guest. It was, I can't remember the name of the character, but it was Leslie Nielsen who was the actual guy who was playing
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And he was sitting in there, and he was tapping his ring, his class ring, on the chair as they were talking. And afterwards, Hawkeye was talking about it, and he was like, "Man, those ring tappers, all those guys that went to the
Ring
academy,"
knockers. Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh yeah, those are those people, right? No matter where they are in life, that was the key, right? This was the highlight of my life. Done, right?" And then they remind everybody of it. What I'm curious is if someone was doing that unconsciously, I guess, maybe in terms of like it just became a habit and now they're not thinking about it. And now they're consistently like bringing it up in conversation. So, oh yeah, oh, I was JTF2 back in the day, whatever, How do you think we could lead those people into seeing their everyday life, like into actually enjoying that life? Or do you think that is something that they have to figure out on their own?
Well, just let me grab a ring real quick.
Boom, right there.
There you go. There's a ring
Perfect.
for you. Let's do a
Nice.
little bit of ring knocking, shall
There
we?
you
What
go.
should I knock it on?
You can knock it on your boom. You just tap it on your boom a little bit. Tick, 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 tick,
So that's a ring that I could knock on things all day long if I wanted to, but I don't because I try not to wear it a lot because I think it's a little bit much. I think it's to be constantly ring knocking every day is to rely on the past. And I only like to rely on the past as it's who I am. It's not what defines me. And so I can count on that ring every second of my life without wearing it. It's part of me. It's inside me. It's what I was taught to be. It's who I am. But I don't need to wear it. I don't need to knock on it. In fact, it hangs there for a reason. So anyone who's really paying close attention will know that I got a ring that I'm not knocking on all the time. I'm leading my life without knocking on anything. I'm just doing my best based on the peaks throughout my past that have taught me a few things and allowed me to move forward with all of those peaked lessons to do my best. That's what I consider be ring knocking is go earn a ring and then don't knock it a bunch of times.
Put it in a box. Julie, any thoughts on ring knockers? Have you seen that in any of your careers or anything where people hang their lives on a championship or something like that?
Well, I don't have a ring. I just have an aura ring, so I don't
Yeah,
have
me too,
anything,
Julie.
super fancy. But I mean, I have seen that. I guess I don't want to slam engineers because my husband's an engineer
And my wife.
and Sean's wife. But I think there's a bit of that. I've seen that before.
Yeah, there
like
is.
they have the pinky
Oh, it's
and
a big
and
deal.
they show it,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
have you seen my ring? And so, I mean, I have had some
Oh, yeah.
exposure to that. So I think that's a thing. And it's like, well, do you have your ring? Are you really an engineer or not? And let's show it and flash it. Back in the day, and it's still maybe part of it. So I have seen that. But again, I think if you're confident in what you've done and your accomplishments, you don't need to have the jersey or the ring. People know that you're legit and what you're about. You don't need to show the flash just to show who you are or get respect.
Yeah, I agree. But you know what? On a different little note, I guess, I think there is a
Awesome.
time and place for it. You know, like I'm not saying because I'm wearing my Pathfinder shirt right now. What I'm saying is there's a time to wear the ring, and I don't know when that time is because like I've had that ring for a while now, and I've worn it less than a dozen times, and in fact, I've probably only worn it about 6 times. And so when I initially put it on, I was kind of treating it not casually, but I remember the first time I walked out into the general public with it. In fact, I was going through the checkout. Julie has been in Ferraro's, our local grocery store, big grocery store here in Roslyn. So she knows what Ferraro's is all about. I was going through a checkout. I had my ring on. It was the first time I'd worn it out. And one of the ladies, I won't give her name. She's super cool. She's about my age. And as I was handing her my gift card, she saw the ring. She said, "Oh, that's a very nice ring. What is that?" And I said, "Oh, it's just a ring." And she said, "Can I have a look at it?" And I just took it off and I gave it to her. And she held it in her hand. And she said, "Oh, it's heavy. Oh, what is that? What is? Oh, is that from when you were in the military?" And I said, "Yeah, it was from back in that time." She said, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, it's kind of it's a special unit that I was with." And she said, "Oh, is that the unit that I've heard about?" And I was like, I don't know. And then her eyes started watering, and I was like, "Oh my goodness," because we were having a little moment. I was like, I'll just take that back, and I haven't worn it out since. Because it was like it was a moment, man. Like it was a big deal because I don't know. It was a big deal for her. I guess it was a big deal for me. I didn't get all watery, but there was an opportunity there where it could have got watery, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to hang this ring back up and maybe not wear that outside for a while. So, when do you wear it and when don't you? I don't know. I don't want to categorize the ring as now it's a ring of power and it's a ring to rule them all and to bind them. I don't treat it like that. But I also don't want to treat it so casual that now it's just I'm wearing it every day. And I don't know. I've got to figure out how to wear this ring appropriately is maybe my point.
Yeah, I think there's times for it for sure. I mean, like you think about Remembrance Day, like that's why we wear our medals on Remembrance Day, is that uh, it's a reminder, right? And it's not so much for our pride as veterans, but it's more
I
for,
disagree with that.
see, I would see it the way I look at the wearing medals on Remembrance Day is that it shows the people, the people that never served in the military, that we are all around you.
Oh, it does that as
You know what I
well.
mean? That's what I think at least in my view, the primary reason for it is. But
For you.
yeah, for me. And
But that's not the case for a boatload of other guys out there.
true.
Yeah.
True.
So let's just be careful of that generalization because there's a lot of guys who like to put on their medals on Remembrance Day because it gives them that sense of pride. And that's important and that's good for them. And so maybe you're a little bit different in the sense of you're doing it so that the civilian population can understand what it represents and et cetera. So that's a different approach. But definitely there's guys out there that like to wear it because they're proud of that fact. And then secondarily, it's nice for the civilian population to see it.
Yeah, I don't. No, you're right. Let me rephrase because that's not how I want it to come across. That's not why I wear mine. It's not like a poking my chest out and be like, "Hey, everybody, look what I did." What I guess mean more specifically is that it is um, it's more of a reminder, similar to a cenotaph, similar to it. I look at other people's medals as I guess maybe sacrifices, right? If you've gone somewhere, if you've been somewhere, if you've done certain things along the way that you get medals for it, it means that you've sacrificed portions of your life in order to serve the rest of us. And so that's, I guess, where I see it a little bit more. The point I was going to make about it was the fact that, like, I don't break mine out every day. Mine sit in a shelf waiting for the right moment. If I have like when I went to Ottawa for the Canadian Walk for Veterans and we were recognized in the House of Commons, I wore my medal because it's like an official deal. I don't know. So I figured that
Well, it's a
makes sense too.
requirement.
Yeah. versus, when I went to the first Canadian Walk for Veterans, I wore my medal there too, because I wanted people to recognize that one of the organizers was a veteran instead of me just walking around with a cowboy hat on. But subsequent walks, I stopped wearing it because didn't feel like the moment was correct, if you know what I mean.
I do.
So we're getting a little off the point of peaking in life versus.
No, you are.
I am totally. I'm going on a tangent here. But my original point was basically agreeing with you, is that there is a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't feel like it's a time and a place for it, it's not.
Correct.
In my view of it.
Yeah, and of course, my background is not military, but for example, would be, like a champion race jersey per se.
Mhm.
So, you might get a jersey from a race and could be a big deal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
It is.
And so again, maybe you're going to wear it, but you're not going to break it out and wear it every day. But perhaps
Correct.
you wear it as, same thing to your point, as a reminder. Maybe it's a reminder of the race, whether it was a success or it wasn't, but it's just a reminder of what you did in the past, or maybe the struggles you went through or the achievements. And it's just a reminder for yourself, but it's not to show the world, hey, look at me, I've got this awesome jersey and, I'm awesome. It's just more for yourself, perhaps as a reminder or something for yourself, but not to show yourself off.
Yeah, the interesting part of it is that most people that are outside the circle don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So even with a jersey, you could probably wear that jersey every day and people would be like, okay, cool, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't recognize what it actually is. Versus
I've been asked what Boy Scout group I'm with.
Exactly. Right? So I think I think that there's a there's a point at, again, I'm going to go back to the Jocko podcast I was just listening to this morning, is that if you're not in the game, you don't know the game is happening, and therefore you don't know what the prizes are. You don't know what the end result is. You don't know what the gain is. And I've said this before on a few different podcasts, was that, here in Edmonton, if you live south of a certain line, you would rarely know that there's a base in Edmonton, right? Like I can go down, back in the day, I went downtown, I was in uniform. I don't remember why I was in uniform, but I was walking around downtown and somebody stopped me and was like, "Oh, wow, are you in the military?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." I'm like, "Really? Where are you based?" And I'm like, "Here." And they're like, "Oh, where?" I'm like, "At the base here in town. It's like just on the north side." They're like, "Oh, I didn't even know we had a base. Well, how big is it? How many people are there?" I'm like, "Oh dear." But they're not in the game. They don't know what it's about. And even
they're in a different game.
Different game. That's a good point.
And they might be playing their game better than your game, by the way.
Absolutely. They absolutely might. We got a question here. Hold on a second. Or we got a comment, I should say. It's an interesting gray area, because when people have done something notable, it can mean a lot for others to meet, talk to, and learn from others who have done admirable things. Absolutely. Only the individual can know why they're representing the things they've done, selfish, selfless, or for other reasons. That's a great point. And I think goes along with the, thanks, Eric, first off, for that. It is an interesting gray area, because there are a lot of notable things that people would want to talk to other people about. And I mean, specifically, Shaun, I've talked about this before, is that lately, the big thing right now is special forces, special operations, special, what hits online a lot is JTF2, SEALs, Green Berets, Special Forces, Special Operations, CSOR, blah, 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 blah. People want to hear from that. But 20 years ago, when you got out, how many people wanted to hear about the Special Forces?
Well, we didn't exist at that time. I mean, no one knew that we existed, I should say.
But even then, how many people with the Airborne or with the Pathfinders, or they're like, not many people knew what the Pathfinders are to begin with. How do you bridge that gap from the people that don't know, when people ask you what Boy Scout group you're in, right, to actually being, oh, well, I did some pretty cool stuff in the Army?
Well, I'll answer the question in two different ways. So, if a person who's standing in front of me in an analog form, in a real person form, is asking me the question, I've got to figure out how much time I'm going to spend explaining the answer. And then I've got to figure out, and why would I? Because is it worth my time? Is it of value? Is just educating that one person using my time wisely? Or do I feel that by educating them, they're going to educate others? So is that wise? So I've got to figure out the analog problem in front of me. But more correctly for me nowadays, it's the digital answer that I've got to consider a little more deeper. So in speaking in front of a microphone and wearing this Pathfinder shirt and then grabbing my ring and then holding that up to the interwebs and talking about these various things, I'm not just talking to one person, I'm talking to a infinite amount of people. And so by considering it that way, I've got to think a little more carefully than just delivering a message to a person on the sidewalk. So I don't have a lot of things figured out at this point in respect to how to explain what it means to be a Pathfinder or what it means to be in JTF2 or whatever the case is. But I will say this to your how you start the question. 20 years ago versus now, there's a lot more interest now in special operations, in high performers, we'll call them. And here's why I think that is, because people want to do better. Like 20 years ago, there wasn't quite as much awareness of you can do better in life, because the only way you could figure that out is if you bumped into the person in analog and you looked at them and thought, whoa, that dude is freaking crushing it. And now you've got a physical representation of what is possible as a human being. 20 years ago, the internet didn't have the classic humans can be awesome videos. But now we've got that. And now there's a much greater awareness of, as a Pathfinder, you can ... And any young man or woman out there who's kind of listening to that ... should then think, whoa, that's possible. If he can do it, then I can do it. And so these are different times. And so why I think there's more of an interest or fascination with special operations is because to get into and be effective in special operations, you've got to figure out a few things, and that's called performing at a high level. And people, I think, at their core, want to do better in life. And it's for them to figure out how to do that. But 20 years ago, there weren't many answers. Well, now there's a lot, and it's called special operations.
Julie, have you noticed anything in terms of riding, high performance, long distance, 24-hour solo stuff like that? Have you noticed an uptake in the last little while of people getting interested in it, or asking questions about it, or just diving into the subject more often at all?
I would say there's actually more of a downturn, but to Shaun's point, you do always get, when people ask or they get a sense of what you're doing, 24-hour solar mountain bike racing, people normally think that's pretty nuts. So people will ask you about it. And then to Shaun's point, it's about, well, are they really interested? Or do they just, it's mostly what do you eat and what do you sleep? Those are the main answers. And then you talk about, well, how much further information are you going to give them? Are they just asking you just out of interest, or is it actually something that they're looking to get into? So I think people have some kind of interest, but they don't really, or are able to wrap their head around what it takes. People generally perhaps want to know, how did you achieve that? How do you get better? But overall, I think there's a bit of a downturn with the 24-hour solo racing. It has, having said that, it's starting to come back a little bit more in Canada with the Canadian Rockies that went in Canmore last year and again. But people, it's just, to Shaun's point, it's assessing how much information do you give them, how interested are they. If they want to get better and maybe they're looking to get into it, then you're going to take the time and give them some more tools. But if it's just kind of like, well, you're a nut job, then I'm not going to probably give too much information away.
That's a great point. I was actually at the bank a little while ago, and I'm not sure. I think my wife mentioned that I was in Afghanistan, and the teller was like, "Really? You were in Afghanistan?" And I was like, "Yeah." That was about it. And they're like, "Oh, I've never met anybody who's been in Afghanistan." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I know lots of people that were there. There, you're right. You guys are absolutely right in that you have to gauge it based on how much information that person actually wants, right? Are they just
Well,
making conversation?
that is your first
Yeah.
point of concern, or first thought should be, how much time do I put into this moment based on what I think the positive outcome will be? So that's for you and the other person that you're interacting with. But the other second piece, which is far more important, is guess what? If you looked at that person and said, yeah, you just spoiled it for every freaking veteran out there. And so you've got two responsibilities. You've got the interaction between you and that individual, and you've got the interaction between you and every single veteran that you're representing. Make sense?
That is a very good point. And I remember being told very early in my basic training career that, or basic training, that you are no longer you. You are now Canadian Forces personnel, so and so. You're a Canadian Forces soldier, so and so. And even now, I'm a Canadian Forces veteran, so and so. I'm an Afghanistan veteran. I'm a combat veteran. Whatever title you want to add onto it. And Eric actually makes a great point here on one of the comments. He says, correction. I found Shaun researching special forces, but was then exposed to a web of interesting people like Chance, Julie, and others. A person is more than any title, but the title might be the introduction. I think that goes to your point, Shaun. Exactly what you're
agreed.
similar to what you're
It's a
saying.
fair point.
Some might have found a guy like Shaun, realized he wasn't going to tell them the itinerary of JTF2 selection, and then left, which is a sad way to value a person.
Yeah, I also agree with that.
Yeah, those are some
I've seen
points.
it happen in my DMs where some guy has been super excited to find a resource like me, and then started asking all of the questions that are typical about, dude, I'm still in high school, and but can you tell me the secret solution that makes me JTF2 by tomorrow? And I will say, no, I can't. And then that's the last I hear of them, because they want the shortcut. They want the sexy without doing the work. And so, I've disappointed some people in my DMs by not being able to give them the one sentence secret sauce that makes them Jason Bourne overnight. I just can't, because it doesn't exist.
Oh, I'm done. I'm out of here.
So what I do try to do, to Eric's point, is I try to figure out a way. Each month, I try to do it a little bit better. I try to figure out a way to communicate with a person that doesn't put a hook into them, but makes them more interested in the deeper conversation of how to do life better, rather than just trying to be Jason Bourne overnight. So I have more success with it now than I did when I first started out. So I'm still trying to find ways to be of value, even if I think the person is just here to kick a tire and then move along.
Got any thoughts on that, Julie?
I would say I agree kind of where Shaun is going with that. From a coach perspective, people may reach out. And again, if perhaps you just give them a little bit of information to generate the conversation and assess the interest level, not hit them with everything. And again, let them know that there's no quick fix. If you want to get into something, whatever it is, you've got to do the work, but maybe one step at a time. Don't hit them with everything it's going to take to get to their final outcome. Just hit them with the pieces and perhaps guide them and give them a little bit of tidbits of information, and perhaps they can digest it, and then it's more manageable to see their end goal, rather than hit them with everything all at once. And again, it depends on the person. Everyone's learning curve is different, and how you communicate with them.
Yeah. I have a random question for you that kind of goes along those lines, but how did you end up linking up with Shaun to begin with? That's a story I don't think we've ever heard. How did you two get linked up initially?
Well, to be honest, I saw him at a race and I'm like, he looks pretty badass. I mean, maybe he knows what he's doing. So I thought, well, I'll go to one of these 24 hours and I'll just see what it's all about. And the one that I went to actually was my husband did his first 24-hour, and same thing. I thought, well, I've been on a team, I've done the corporate, and maybe I'll just see what happens with him and see if he gets away with it, and if he comes out alive, maybe something I'll give a go. So Shaun was there, and he was racing, and he was in and out of the pits, and then he ended up helping my husband Steve a little bit. And I remember, I think it was 1 or 2 laps to go towards the end of the race, and Steve came through the pits, and Shaun said, yeah, there's no need to get off the bike. It's all about improving your position at this point. Here's your bottle, off you go. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. Like, he looks like he knows what he's doing. And I said to him afterwards, well, if I do a 24-hour, he's the man. He knows what's up and how to get it done. So I thought, well, this, I'll give this a go, but I don't want to do it on my own. He seems to know what he's doing. He's pretty legit. And I just liked his demeanor and how he just, no excuses. Off you go. Doesn't matter what's happening. Here you go. Get after it. So I like that mentality. So after that, I think probably shortly after, I reached out to Shaun, and same thing, said, would you consider taking me on? And the rest is history.
Yeah, that's kind of how it worked.
Yeah.
And I guess just to reinforce one point, there was a time in my life when I used to be a badass. Not so much anymore, but there was a time.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah. Just there used to be.
Used to be.
So I got another really awesome question for you. What do you think is the biggest challenge for you working with Shaun? What was the hardest thing you had to?
That's a good one.
Overcome.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I guess one of the things was just having the trust. When I initially started with Shaun, I mean, of course, he was well versed, and I knew what he knew what he was doing. But I guess initially it was just trusting Shaun and trusting the process, that what he said would actually happen. And when you're pretty new to a race, for example, especially a 24-hour, you're just asking the questions, and the biggest challenge was just trusting that I was ready to go for the races with the initial 2-4. So that was a big challenge. And then I guess towards the back end, I'm pretty high strung and go, and just trusting that he was giving me enough work. Sometimes I'd be like, no, more, I need more, and just trusting that I was good to go. So I had to, challenge him, which is fine. I mean, it's good to challenge the process, but just I had to understand the recovery aspect as well as the training. So that was a challenge on the back end of it.
I like that. That's really good. Shaun, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
What was the biggest challenge working with Julie?
That's a good question. I would say reining her in. So, every athlete comes with a unique set of challenges. Every athlete is very unique, and 24-hour solos are no joke, as I've said in the past. And in order to have someone be really successful in a 24, you can't just treat them like a nameless, faceless number. That's a road to ruin. And so these things, this race that we're talking about is literally the special operations event in racing, in all cycling. There's no harder version than 24-hour solo mountain bike racing, other than 48-hour solo mountain bike racing, which Julie has never done, which is really disappointing. So, these things are really hard, and in order to do well in them, you've got to approach it as a special operator to some degree. And so you've got to look at each individual within that special operations team and draw the best out of them based on their strengths and weaknesses. And as you ascertain what those are, you'll find that people are far more different than they are the same in respect to pros and cons, or strengths and weaknesses. But then, as I've said in the past, that's all just a veneer on top of the human experience, which is the commonality of each person is the same. So all the struggles, all the concerns, all of the this, that, and the other thing that, makes us feel like self-doubt, not worthy, blah, 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 all that stuff. These are all things that every single athlete had to face. And Julie, as a coach now, understands that that's what she spends most of her time working on as a good coach, with the other aspect of, oh, and I'm also going to give you a workout today. And so as you're giving them that workout where they want to do more rather than do less, which would be Julie's case most of the time, or she wants to ride 3 hours instead of just 2 hours. Well, I'm not just like reining her in the sense of clawing back an hour out of her. I'm actually reining her in on that much deeper level, which is the common human experience of what her makeup is, the sense of the person that she is. So it's not about the workout, it's about the human, and learning how to figure out to push or pull or left or right. That's your coaching job. Coach the human, not just the sport.
That is great.
Would you say I'm off base, Julie, or what are your thoughts?
I think that's a great point, and that's something that I am learning as a coach now. And everyone is different, so you definitely have to tune into the athlete. And everyone has a different personality. Some needs to be pushed, some need to be reined in. So it's definitely a balance, and it's the physical and the mental aspect are both key for coaching. And to the point of myself, yeah, I definitely I did have to be reined in, but then when I was reined in, I think I was pretty good at sticking with the program.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that was going to be my next point, and I'm glad you raised that, because if you've got to push, then you push, and if you've got to pull, then you pull, and then wherever you get the athlete or the human to the spot that they need to be in for that moment, well, they don't stay there. At least not as a coach like me, because then I'm going to move them somewhere else. I'm going to keep pattern interrupting. I'm going to keep forcing adaptation. And so the moment that I rein Julie in, as an example, and now she's in an optimal, efficient training velocity, guess what I'm going to do now? I'm going to push her harder. I'm going to pull her back more than she needs to be. I'm going to move her way left, even though she wants to be center. It's a crude term, and I know people give it a negative connotation. I don't feel that it's a negative word. I'm going to manipulate her performance on the emotional, physical, and mental aspects so that she sees the best version of herself. I'm not trying to puppet master shape Julie. I'm trying to create opportunities for her to then shape herself to become more awesome. That was my job as a coach.
Man, lots of great points here.
But again, Julie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
What are you finding?
Yeah, you do have to, there's always something different. So you do have to get the athlete comfortable, but then you do have to also get them out of their comfort zone as well. And to your point, manipulate them to get to a better place, because every situation is different. Every training block is different. Every race is different. You may have to work on their mental game. Maybe it's their physical game. So there's always something different that you need to change or move around to get them to the best so they can have their optimal performance, whether it's in a training session or a race. So it's always adjusting it day to day.
And I'd like to just add one more thing.
Sure.
And it's this. As a coach, your job, I feel, is also to do this. Have the athlete believe that you weren't coaching them when in fact you were. So, as you're coaching them, you Jedi mind trick them to then believe that they learned all of that stuff by themselves. So that's your job as a coach. The other job as a coach is to help them very clearly understand that you coached that into them. So you need to Jedi mind trick, and you need to hardcore coach obvious, so that they understand that when I'm being obviously coached, it feels like this. When I'm being Jedi mind tricked, it doesn't feel like anything. And then maybe 10 years later, you can look at your athlete in the eye and say, guess what? Tag, you're it. Now you're the coach. Go do that.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
That's precisely what happened.
Yeah. So here's a question for you guys. It actually kind of reminds me of there's a quote from Sun Tzu. The goal is to win without fighting.
For sure.
And it while you guys were talking, I came up with this thought that you guys know what a tribute is in ancient Rome. What happens in a tribute?
To some degree.
Okay, so for those that don't know, it is when a conquering general comes back to Rome, there's a huge parade. You saw it in the movie Gladiator, where they comes down the main hall and the thing. The concept is that there's supposed to be a slave in the chariot with you, and he continually whispers one thing throughout the whole tribute: "Memento mori." Right? Remember,
I didn't know that.
Remember, you are mortal. And I wonder, did you guys either, after big championships or major wins of your athletes, did you ever have to check them a little bit? Or is it more of a long-term mental game where you have to kind of keep their ego in check?
Well, I will say this, that I've literally done this with Julie, and it was usually Julie and Andrew Bovard. They're the goon squad going out and kicking ass for Canada. But
we're gonna get Andrew on here soon.
I've looked at the two of them within a matter of an hour or two of them winning at a big race. And usually it was at a restaurant where we'd sit back and I'd look at the two of them and say, "So what's next?"
That's a good one. Julie, did you do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess even talking about Andrew at kind of one of our last races, same thing. It's like he said after the race, both of us had a crap race for various reasons, but he kind of said, well, I guess we needed to check the ego at some point. So it is true. I mean, you can't win them all.
Can't win them all.
So you've got to just step away and then same thing. Well, what's next now? What are we going to do? A couple of days later, it's like, well, we better sign up for this race. Let's get on with it.
I like that.
Agreed.
Yeah. We got a question here from Alan. What's up, Alan? First off, thanks for watching. That's awesome. Julia, did you know Shaun's background before you sought out his assistance or for the 24-hour race?
I did know his background, and that's why I wanted to work with him. I thought, well, you certainly aren't going to get too much slack with his background, and that's what I wanted. So that was definitely part of the reason for getting involved with Shaun.
Yeah. Did you find out like through the race circuit, or was it just a random kind of overheard? Oh, he was.
Well, I mean, I knew his racing background, and I think the word on the street was, his his background. He didn't probably, to be honest, I didn't know exactly what he did until even just the last year with him being on more and more podcasts and talking about his background. And now I know even more what he did. So perhaps maybe at the time I would have been really scared to hire him now. But
we might not have worked together for a decade.
But definitely, yeah, it was just word on the street. He's legit, and you're going to get the job done, kind of thing.
That's awesome.
And I'll say this, and that's a great question by Al. No one's ever asked that before, so very insightful, pal. My background or my legitimacy on any given career was shaped by what I was doing in that career. So I never, in 24-hour solo mountain bike racing as a coach, I never said, "Do you know who I am?" I didn't ever say that. I've never said that. Like, if you know me, it's only because you've seen my body of work. It's not because I've written it on a poster and stuck it up on the start line. I just never did that. And so, to Julie's point, she never knew anything about what I used to do back in the day until I just started recently talking about it in podcasts. In fact, Julie and Andrew, when I think we were at Worlds in Italy just the other year, and I was coaching
last summer, right?
That's right. Just coaching the two of them, working that pit, and so I was telling them things after the race that they were completely unaware of. And it was, I won't go so far as to say it was shocking to them, but it was certainly new revelations that they were completely unaware of. And I had coached Julie for 10 years and I'd coached Andrew for 10 years. We'd been around the world. We'd done, I mean, we're as tight as a group could be, but there was still a boatload of stuff that they didn't know anything about because I just didn't talk about it with anyone. So I always wanted to earn my way based on what I was doing in the time that I was doing it at versus hanging on to my first career and thinking that that's what I am and that's what I've got to count on for the rest of my life and waving that flag. Whatever flag I've waved at whatever point in my career is based on what I'm doing at that time.
It's a great point. Yeah. And so we are at...
And there wasn't much flag waving, by the way.
You've never been a big flag waver then. I mean, I haven't known you that long, but I've never noticed you being a flag waver. We are just over an hour now. And first off, Julie, I can't thank you enough for being on here. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while. I saw you on Shaun's the Instagram lives, and yeah, really can't thank you enough for being on here. Any final thoughts on peaking in life versus living life, or coaching, or Shaun in general? You want to tell us some secrets or anything that we might
we'll
not
leave
know?
that out.
Well, might need a couple more hours if you want me to say the secrets, but I'll keep those in check. I think just thanks for having me on. It was great to catch up with you. And I just think in terms of peaks and valleys, just be thankful and appreciative of all your accomplishments that you've done in the past, but that they are a part of you. But then also, be in the present, enjoy the moment, and look towards what's next and how you can do better and what you can achieve in the future.
I think that's fantastic. Shaun, any final points before we shut her down?
No, thanks for showing up, Julie, and appreciate your wisdom, of course, as a kick-ass coach. And hopefully you and Chance can organize something for you to come back again in the near future. I love these kind of conversations. Anyone who's listening to this right now, Julie and I are talking specifically about 24-hour solo mountain bike racing, but it ain't about that. The race is just our race. The actual race is the stuff that's deep meat and potatoes underneath that veneer of all of the stories. It's the common human experience, us as humans, how we can all do it better, irrespective of what the race is called.
How to be better in the strategic game versus the tactical
The race
game.
of life.
The race of life. Dun, dun, dun. Well, yeah, that's fantastic. I can't thank you guys enough. This has been a outstanding conversation. I really did enjoy it. I learned so much about coaching in general that I'm gonna have to rewatch this 3 or 4 times just so that I can better understand what I just heard, because there was fantastic stuff. And I can't thank you enough for watching. The comments, the questions out there, fantastic. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell thing, the reminder thing on the YouTubes, and make sure that you're aware anytime we go live, which is every day, where we learn, build, and grow here on the Collective. And we'll see y'all next time. Chimo.
Thank you.
Chimo.